They say you're never in trouble in the playoffs until you lose at home. Well, the Jets have already lost at home, Game 1, 3-2 decision to the Dallas Stars, but I'm simply not hitting the panic button just yet.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for choosing to make Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode, obviously, we just finished wrapping up Winnipeg versus Dallas Game 1. Did not go quite according to plan. A bit of a tough loss, but one that I don't think you should worry about too much. That said, the power play may be a little bit of a concern, so we'll chat about that. And I want to talk about, obviously, the potential return of Morrissey and the rumor that Dmitri Rashevsky may be joining the Jets sometime in the near future. So we'll dive into all of that in just a brief moment. But before we do, did want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, like I said, tonight didn't exactly go according to plan. The Jets had a really generally strong game for about 45, 50 minutes. Outside of the first 10 minutes, I really didn't think the Jets played a particularly bad outing, right? This was Winnipeg controlling things at 5v5. I thought that they were generally the stronger team. I thought that they had some really dangerous and good looks. And on most evenings, you'd probably expect the Jets to win. Hellebuck looked pretty good. The 5v5 offense looked good. But unfortunately, Mikko Rantanen happened, some bad puck luck happened, and it all sort of conspired for the Jets to end up losing this one 3-2. Now, I don't really feel too bad about it. I mean, it is one of those things where, yes, you don't really want to lose the first game on home ice, and I think it's probably worth talking about the fact that Robertson just came back. He was basically a non-factor in his first game. He'll start to ramp up and be a problem later this series, I'm sure. But, you know, the Stars are also without Miro Heiskanen, and Heiskanen is obviously a huge part of their offense. A lot of their transition flows through him. So Winnipeg really wants to take advantage and needs to take advantage of all of these games where he's not in. Now, by the time he does come back, I will be honest, I don't really think he's going to be at 100%, and it's going to take him time to get up to speed. But for all of that, right, the Jets still need to win some of these games and make sure that they don't put themselves behind the eight ball too deeply to start the series. And so this game, you know, really felt like Winnipeg could have used a little bit of a shooter-tutor. One of the rare times where Winnipeg definitely threw a lot at net, but I felt like some of the decision-making, a couple of bounces, some fluky moments, and maybe some opportunities where the Jets either overthought it, maybe overpassed, maybe mishandled the puck, maybe just missed a good chance completely. It all sort of put Winnipeg in a tougher position. And then they had 4 power plays and scored on 0 of them. So, yeah, you know, just one of those strange games. The good news is Mark Scheifele came back and scored a goal in his return, so that's awesome. Niederreiter also got a great goal off of a Fleury stretch pass. And again, if you're looking for bright spots throughout this game, I think that there was generally a lot to be encouraged by. The Stars really didn't have too many looks. I thought the Jets were generally the stronger team, and Winnipeg got very close to tying it. I think it's probably, you know, worth giving this team a fair bit of credit and also remembering that, listen, the Stars have had an extra day of rest. Winnipeg, you know, played a double overtime on Sunday. It took a lot out of the squad. So, you know, with all that in mind, I wouldn't be shocked if Winnipeg is still feeling at least a little bit of fatigue. I also think for this game one, both teams played a little conservatively. They didn't try to push all the chips on the table. And I think Winnipeg, while they did control play, probably could have gotten a little more aggressive. I will say physically they certainly were. They definitely threw the body around. I thought that they kind of tried to instill some of that physicality that they had in the Blues series on a Stars team that doesn't really play like that. So Yeah, interesting first game. Again, I don't think the scoreline and obviously the game result are, things to be happy about, but how the Jets got there, I'm not too worried. I will say though that again, the special teams is a bit of a problem, and we'll talk a little more specifically about that. But the other thing that I kind of was a little frustrated by was Arneal's line arrangements, right? He went back to the usual lineup, which I did expect. I think we all did. But then when things weren't really working, he did swap Ehlers and Niederreiter. It's just, I don't really know that that's going to fix a lot. Ehlers and Lowry together, good, right? But then you have Mason Appleton on that line. And like Appleton, yeah, he's figured on a number of goals and he's had points. But if you actually watch how he plays and stuff, he's really struggled to make an impact throughout this postseason. He had like 1 3-point outing, and he definitely gets credit for like some secondary assists and stuff. But I don't really feel like he's been that noticeable. And yet the Jets keep giving him a fair bit of ice time. So, yeah, I kind of look at this as a situation where if you're struggling to score, maybe you want to promote some guys who have a little more offensive ability in them. The Nemestikov line was just kind of there. It was sort of all right. Honestly, I really would have liked to have seen Iafallo maybe given a little bit of a bigger role, give Perfetti some extra ice time. I just feel like the Jets, I mean, they weren't bad. And again, I think, there's some fatigue. You're still missing Morrissey in this game. So I don't want to read too much into it. But the reality is it is a best of 7. It's a small margin for error. I do kind of get the sense, though, that what happened in the Blues series doesn't really apply to this one. For one thing, the Stars don't really do a lot of the same net front tipped traffic the way St. Louis really shot for. And so I thought Hellebuck looked pretty settled. The other thing that's probably worth noting is that, the Jets, for their part, I thought protected the slot. I think that they generally cleared the crease pretty well. And so, I don't really worry too much about the road games. I think Winnipeg has a really good chance to win at least one game in Dallas. So take that for what it's worth. I don't think that this is going to be a very home-sided series the way that we saw in the Blues and Jets series. I do think Winnipeg wins at least one on the road. I said in the preview episode for this one that I fully expect the Jets to split at least one of these sets on the road. So we'll see if it is the first one or if they maybe have to win like a game 5 or a game 6 or something. But either way, not too worried. I will say again, the finishing is probably the only thing that I would hope maybe get some improvement. But I mean, it is what it is. Some folks were kind of grousing that the Jets really couldn't get any puck luck. And I think, let's be frank, the Jets got a ton of fortune getting to the series. They played well against St. Louis at times, and I think that they certainly, fought hard and earned their final, win in Game 7. But the Jets realistically shouldn't be here right now. So if the universe is maybe cosmically rebalancing and kind of riding the ship a little bit after the Jets were granted some extraordinary fortune to win Game 7, I don't really mind it coming in this first game. Feel it out, get healthier for Game 2, and go from there. Some adjustments will be made. I'm sure they'll be doing some stuff in practice before Friday, so not really going to stress too much about this particular result. But of course, the power play has been a little bit of a different story, and I want to talk about why the Jets need that to return to top form in just a brief moment. But before we did want to let you know about our friends and partners at Indeed. You just realized your business needs to hire somebody yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates quickly? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've personally used Indeed when I was looking for work several years ago. I can attest to its resume builder being very comprehensive. And when I filled in all of my details, whether it was work experience or domains of expertise or even salary requirements, Indeed immediately matched me with some great openings and positions, some of which I really thought were great and actually applied to. If you are looking to hire great candidates, this really couldn't be easier. And now you can even speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we are continuing to chat a little bit about, some observations from Winnipeg's current playoff run. This one actually extends not just from the playoffs, but also to, some stuff that was kind of heading into the postseason from the regular season. Winnipeg's power play for the past month and a half, maybe 2 months, hasn't really been the same. It's not been a particularly great experience. The Jets have had a lot of absences on some key units, right? The first power play unit has had to go without Ehlers and Velarde, and at times Scheifele, sometimes all together, sometimes at different moments. So obviously that has a really big impact. Ehlers and Velarde in particular are two of your most important puck movers and really some of your most creative outlets. So for the Jets, I think that they did try to compensate, and I think that they did get away with some stuff here and there. Perfetti had a couple of big moments on power plays throughout the series against the Blues, but tonight I kind of came away looking a little concerned about how the Jets were trying to create some offense. Now the Stars have a very good PK, so I think that that's definitely worth bearing in mind. But the Jets' power play has been, by and large, this season a strength that the team leans on. It finished the year cooled off a little bit, but it was still rocking at a league-leading 28%. During this postseason, it's been closer to like 23%, and after tonight, it'll definitely have taken a pretty big hit. 4 straight power plays, no goals, not great. Now, the goal-scoring absence isn't like the main concern. If the Jets were creating lots of opportunities, but they were just getting goalied, I don't think that would really concern me. That wasn't necessarily the case in this game. After the first power play, maybe 2 power plays, the third and fourth ones, Winnipeg really just couldn't get set up. I felt like their chances were pretty mediocre, and there were some bad passes and mistakes that kind of led to a general lack of offense on those special teams units. So for me, it does concern me a bit. The Jets really lean heavily on their power play being one of their big secret weapons. And if it's not going to be able to get the job done against the Stars, Winnipeg's going to have to try and win at even strength. While the Jets do outplay opponents at 5v5 and often in convincing fashion, they don't always outscore that. So, I do hope that Winnipeg's power play gets things back on track. I'm, encouraged by what I saw from the first power play, maybe 2 power plays. I don't think that what we saw in the third and fourth ones is necessarily reflective of how it's going to be the rest of the postseason, but, we'll have to see, right? Pierre-Luc did operate on the point on the first unit tonight, and I thought he generally did a pretty decent job. Morrissey has not always been the world's best power play quarterback, although I think he's gotten a lot better at it over the past couple of years. But for the Jets, I just think that anything that they can do to get themselves a little bit closer, to give them a competitive advantage in some capacity, is really helpful. The Stars' power play may not be their most vaunted weapon, but when Rantanen is this hot at this point, you really can't have any sort of gap in ability, right? You got to find a way to even the playing field. So at least Hellebuck looked great. That I don't worry about too much. But the Jets' power play, a little concerning. If you are looking for some general good news, at least the PK has generally been pretty good. I know it did concede 1 tonight, but for the most part, the Jets' PK has generally been very strong. I think Chenoweth adjusted pretty well in the last series. The Blues, frankly, didn't have all that many great scoring chances on their subsequent power plays later in the series. They did still get some stuff through, but not as much as they were at the start. So that's positive. And I do think that Payne is very smart. I think he's one of the best special teams coaches in the league. So all the issues with the power play, I don't expect them to last. It's also been a while since we've even had a roughly full power play unit, at least up front. On the back end, we usually don't have too many absences there. So, Yeah, I don't want to read too much into things, but I do hope that the Jets kind of get it under control quickly. I expect in game 2 that if the Jets do get a power play, they're at least going to score once, right? They can't go scoreless on special teams forever. It's just not their style. Winnipeg is too good for that. I suspect that Winnipeg will have a big answer. Payne will go to the drawing board, come up with some big adjustments, and the Jets will go from there. But yeah, other than that, I guess the only thing I really hope for is that the power play can back up the 5v5 offense, because I do think 5v5 finishing is going to be a little bit of a challenge in this series. The Stars have not always been super stingy, but once Heiskanen gets back, that's going to start to change. I think already they've done a good job keeping the slot a little harder for the Jets to get to. And Winnipeg, I didn't think got in front of Otter quite enough. There were a lot of one-and-done chances and some point shots and stuff that didn't really hit a lot of traffic. The Jets really need to get in his face. I think Winnipeg has the advantage there, and that's kind of what the Jets should kind of sort of take from the Blues series, right? Do St. Louis's model of offense in front of the net. Winnipeg's got some big boys. They can tip and deflect, and I think that could be a really nice asset in front of a goalie who certainly has a strong reputation. His performance at times hasn't always matched up to that, but in this game, it certainly did. So we'll have to see how that all pans out, but again, if the Jets' power play can really help supplement whatever the 5v5 offense is missing, that'd be fantastic. A very scary power play that forces the Stars to be disciplined when we know that they often aren't. I think that's going to only serve the Jets a bit more. Other than that, though, it's just one of those things where you just hope that at some point the dam breaks. Rantanen's not going to be scoring hat tricks every game. I suspect the Stars' power play is going to have its own issues, so I don't want to get too doomery or anything. And again, like I kind of mentioned in the first portion, the Jets have shown a lot of fight back. They have been a very strong team throughout this year, and so I tend to trust the trend with the squad. I know that my faith did waver in the Blues series, but if the Jets' power play continues to be as good as it is, I suspect that I'm not going to be too concerned about how Winnipeg creates offense on that unit going forward. So, yeah, I guess the sum takeaway is don't panic about the game and the series yet. Unfortunate scoreline, not perfect, but we just have to hope that as Winnipeg continues to get ramped up in the series, maybe get some guys back in the near future, that they continue to improve internally and get back to playing their usual brand of hockey. They played a lot of it tonight, even if it wasn't perfect. So, yeah, not going to stress about it. There's plenty of series left, just game 1. And again, after everything Winnipeg just went through against the Blues, I almost feel weirdly relaxed. This series hasn't started in the way that the St. Louis one did, so hopefully that can only mean good tidings for their odds to advance past the second round. But the Stars are certainly going to be a tough team. They've already shown that they can win even when they're not playing at their best, and they're doing it without some of their top stars either in the game or performing like their usual selves. So Winnipeg, get things straight, get back in order, and Friday should be a really good opportunity for the Jets to even up the series and head to Dallas on Sunday for a critical road matchup. But of course, I did mention potential reinforcements. We'll have to talk a little bit about Morrissey's return and the potential for Dmitri Rashevsky joining us from Dynamo Moscow after his season has ended. We'll dive into the implications of all of that in just a brief moment, but before we do, did want to shout out our friends and partners at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where the heck all your money went? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. It's an all-in-one convenience tool, so you can see where your money is going to. Maybe it's on food delivery or streaming subscriptions. You might find out that you don't really want to spend all that much on some of this stuff. Monarch Money can actually help you set some goals to start tracking that and making sure that you're hitting your milestones. And if you've got a partner or spouse, there are shared collaboration tools so you can make sure that you're always on the same page with that person who matters most to you when it comes to your financial track record. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we're just wrapping up a little bit with some final thoughts on a couple of potentially big roster additions. Obviously, the first biggest one that's coming back to the lineup, it's going to be Josh Morrissey. Morrissey is set to return sometime, likely on Friday is my guess, based on the fact that he was in a regular practice jersey tonight. He didn't end up featuring in the lineup, but I don't think he'll be out too long. Stanley is also slated to return, but given how good Fleury and Miller have been for the past game or so, I really hope that the Jets choose at least one of these guys to stay in. Shen Miller, I thought, had a pretty strong outing. I know Miller did have one moment where he got elbowed and ended up conceding a tip deflection from Rantanen, but other than that, which, again, I think he's got an argument that there was a missed call there, I really couldn't complain about his performance. I thought his zone exits were strong. He had some good breakout passes. And, generally speaking, the third pairing spent less time in its own end. But, of course, Morrissey is an even bigger thing. He has this ability to be such a game changer when he's at speed, when he's carrying the puck up and down in transition, and when he's inside the offensive zone. That said, the past series, we didn't really see him play a particularly positive role. I felt like the Morrissey that we saw against St. Louis really looked like a shell of himself, which makes me think that he's been dealing with stuff for longer than just the past couple of games. So my hope is that the time off from Morrissey has allowed him to heal up. I think that is one of the most important things for this team, whether it's on special teams or at even strength. There really is no one on this back end who is as dynamic, who is as fluid, and who is as strong and skilled as he is. He is a sort of do-it-all blue liner for this team. Maybe not the most physically imposing, but he wins his way. And I think it's really important for him to go back to his confident puck handling, that transition play, the engagement on the one-on-one duels, all that stuff I think is what we've kind of been missing from him recently. And so getting that form of him back would be fantastic. The other intriguing thing is Dmitri Rashevsky potentially coming over to North America from Dynamo Moscow. Their season's over, and Rashevsky's kind of been in and out of the periphery of a lot of our attention spans because, honestly, I wasn't really expecting him to make a potential trip over to North America anytime soon. He is 24. He's kind of in that prime forward age, but like a lot of guys who stay in Russia, just stay there. They don't come over. And Rashevsky's kind of a bit of a mystery box. I don't really know what to expect from him. His past couple of seasons with Dynamo Moscow, he's had around 35, 38, almost 40 points. He's broken 40 points twice now in the past couple of years. He's got a pretty good goal-scoring record, and I think he actually leads Dynamo's all-time goal-scoring record with like 91 or something from what I recall. But I don't really know what that translates to in the NHL. I think something around 15 to 20 is roughly the conversion rate. The KHL has kind of declined over the past couple of years, so I don't know what their current NHL points equivalency formula is now. That's a really imperfect science. It doesn't really tell you how they're actually going to do. It's just sort of a guesstimation as to what they might be able to do once they move over. Rashevsky is a very intriguing player because he's got a great shot and he's a very crafty skater. I don't know if he's going to be a particularly high impact forward at the NHL level. I think it's very possible, and I think he's got a nice motor, kind of not too dissimilar from Chibrikov, but I think Chibrikov's maybe a little more relentless. But I think if you're looking for a guy who could potentially boost the third line scoring, that's kind of where I'd be looking, right? Rashevsky's not afraid to grind along the walls. He'll create some decent space here and there. He's got a pretty nice release, and, he's not a small player, so I would like to see him potentially get a shot alongside a Lowry. Do I think that happens if he comes over during this playoff run? Probably not. Obviously, the adaptation from Russian ice to North American ice is going to be a big jump. The quality of competition and space and timing is big. So I think you'd probably like him to spend some time in the AHL first. But and this is a big but, the Jets also need help up front. I don't think that that's a particular secret, and maybe it didn't come from the trade deadline, but if the Jets can get some help internally and, Arniel ends up being impressed with what a guy like Rashevsky brings, I would be very intrigued to see him maybe get a look at some point this series. A lot would have to happen for that to even be a consideration, and I am not putting any money on that. I'm not even sure he's going to come over. But if he does and he impresses in practices, maybe the Jets think about whether or not he can kind of become that Chibrikov. I think the plan for Chibrikov was to have him up with the club at this time of the year and even playing an active role in the playoffs. But thanks to that injury he had where he's rehabbing now, that was never an option. With Rashevsky, you might have that chance. And again, I don't think that he's a one-to-one for Chibrikov. I think Nikita is a little more relentless, but again, Rashevsky's, not afraid to grind in space. He'll force turnovers. He'll fight for the puck. He's a really good skilled player, and I think he could be an intriguing middle six to depth option for the Jets, looking for a little bit of extra offense. This is kind of where it's nice when you can call upon these guys who maybe, get called up from the minors late or are overseas and finish their seasons. Suddenly you have a little more extra forward depth. And I think for the Jets, given what you just saw against the Stars, having an extra finishing touch really wouldn't be the worst. In general, the Jets just need more finishing talent, period. So Rashevsky can't hurt at this point. And I really wouldn't be averse to the idea of him getting a couple of reps here to see if he can be an impact player. But again, because it's the playoffs, because it's at the time of the year where Arniel is already loath to make changes, I don't really see it happening. I think it'd be great if it does, but I wouldn't expect it. But again, if it does happen, if he does actually become an NHLer this year and he's able to make an impact, I think that would be pretty darn nice. So we'll have to see about how all of this pans out. I think, with his season over, this is really the best chance for him to come over, right? Winnipeg's got some spots that are going to be competitive going forward, and right now they could use some internal help up front. The injuries that they've rotated in and out of, the issues with some of the 5v5 offense, maybe the power play 2 unit could use an extra shooter. There's a lot of reason to see some opportunity for a guy like Rashevsky, who's been a very good player overseas. Maybe not like a top line guy, but if he can boost any of this middle six core and offer a nice finishing touch, especially during this playoff run, that'd be fantastic. Winnipeg could use more healthy bodies. Parker Ford just got recalled. But, Rashevsky's got a higher ceiling than most of these players that are currently in the Black Aces squad. Winnipeg really could use a top 6 caliber finisher in their middle six, and maybe Rashevsky can be that guy. Again, do I expect it to happen? No. But I'm going to keep an open mind. We'll see how it all pans out. Once he signs his deal, we'll talk about, whether or not he's actually going to play here on a future episode. But for tonight's show, that is going to be all the time that we have. Tomorrow, we'll probably have an episode previewing Winnipeg versus Dallas Game 2, have any updates for you on Morrissey. But for tonight's show, again, that's all the time that we've got. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great night, and go Jets go.